this can be. Okay, so we're going to do first, we do the salutation to the Buddha. Mentally, we bow down 3 times to the Buddha. 1, 2, 3. And then I will recite the salutation 1 time. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the completely enlightened one. And then I will share the screen. Let's just share the whole screen. Okay, it's visible, I think. People online can see.
Yes, Bhante.
Yes, Bhante.
Okay, we can increase the point size a little bit. Yeah, this is the version that I want. Okay, so these are, as I said, these are discourses of the Buddha, sayings of the Buddha that are organized around groups of 5. And now we come to, these will be a series of quite important suttas for those who have the ripe faculties. So first, the text begins by saying that those who have 5 qualities, even while listening to the Dhamma, that's the expression used here, the good Dhamma, one possessing these 5 qualities is incapable of entering upon the fixed course consisting in rightness and wholesome qualities. And this is a technical expression, and so I had a note on this. Yeah, so the notes is from the commentary, which is maybe not so clear. So I'll come back and I'll elaborate on this. So the Pali expression is, the key word here is niyama, which is translated as the fixed course. And it's the fixed course of rightness, which is sammatang. And this word sammatang, those who know a little bit of Pali might recognize this as the abstract form based on the word samma, which we find in each of the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. We have right view is sammaditthi, right intention, samma sankappa, and so on, up to right concentration is samma samadhi. So that is samma. And then when we make this into an abstract noun, it becomes sammatang, which is, you could say, rightness, correctness. Okay, so this is the fixed course consisting in rightness in regard to wholesome qualities. And those wholesome qualities here are the qualities that constitute the Magga. The Magga is the path, the liberating path. So these wholesome qualities would be, in fact, the right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Those same qualities develop to the extent, the liberating extent. Okay, now I wanted to bring in another sutta which shows us how a person enters upon this fixed course of rightness. Let's see if it appears. Okay, so this is a sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya, another collection of the Buddha's discourses. So Samyutta Nikaya, which I translated as the connected discourses of the Buddha, and is from chapter 25, and this is the first sutta, but each of the following suttas in this chapter is constructed on the same model. So here we have the text is saying that the eye, ear, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind, those are the 6 sense faculties through which we experience the world. So these 6 sense faculties are impermanent, always changing, always becoming otherwise. So they don't remain the same even for a single moment, but they're constantly undergoing transformation, rising, passing away. Even through modern science, we can know this. It seems the eye is a stable organ, but we look, what does the eye consist of? Various kinds of molecules. Those molecules consist of atoms. Those atoms consist of subatomic particles. And those subatomic particles are just really bundles of energy, which are constantly going through transformation. So the 6 sense faculties are always undergoing change, becoming otherwise. And so this is something not just to be entertained as an intellectual thought or known as a scientific fact, but this is something that has to be contemplated through insight, experience directly. Okay, so now the text tells us that one who has faith or trust in these teachings and is convinced about them, not just intellectually, but through the actual experience of insight contemplation, then becomes what is called a faith follower. One who has entered, and here we have that expression, one who has entered the fixed course of rightness. And by entering the fixed course of rightness, one enters the plane or the level of the superior persons. This is another term for the noble persons. So one has transcended the plane of the putujanas. These are the worldlings or ordinary people. So one has entered actually the world transcending or liberating path that will culminate in full liberation. And so such a person is incapable of doing any deed, of creating any karma that might lead to rebirth in any of the lower realms of rebirth, the hell realms, the animal realm, or the domain of the ghosts. And this person is incapable of passing away without realizing the fruit of stream entry. So once you become a faith follower, then you are bound to reach the first stage of enlightenment within that same life, even if you don't realize it close to the time of death. Before death takes place, you attain the fruit of stream entry. So this is sort of guaranteed by the sutta. So this is a person called the faith follower. And even though it seems like you're just placing faith in those teachings and that you're just, relying on trust in these teachings, but in fact, to become even a faith follower, one needs the 5 spiritual faculties, the faculties of faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. But what makes the person a faith follower is that among those 5 faculties, the dominant faculty is that of faith. The person has trust in the teaching, and based on that trust, they undertake the practice of insight meditation, through which they can see the impermanence of all these phenomena. Okay, there's another type of person who also enters the fixed course of rightness. That is described in the next paragraph. So this is one who ponders the teachings and then develops a certain degree of wisdom in order to penetrate the teachings. And this person is called a Dhamma follower. A Dhammanusari. And also this person is one who has entered the fixed course of rightness, the plane of superior persons, transcended the plane of the ordinary people, the worldly people. Again, this one is incapable of doing any deed that might lead to rebirth in the 3 lower realms. And this person too is incapable of passing away without realizing the fruit of stream entry. And so we have these 2 types of people who have entered the fixed course of rightness, who are bound to reach the fruit of stream entry. So what distinguishes them is the dominant faculty, So both of them have these 5 faculties. So there's faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration or samadhi, and wisdom. So those are necessary qualities of both the faith follower and the Dhamma follower. But what distinguishes them is the faculty that sort of governs and dominates their practice of the path. The faith follower is a person, maybe more emotional type, more inspired, maybe the kind of person who might be inspired by beautiful images of the Buddha, or when they actually encounter the Buddha in person, then they're inspired by the physical beauty of the Buddha, and they have a spontaneous arising of devotion, even admiration for the person of the Buddha. And then out of that admiration, devotion towards the Buddha, and this faith in the enlightenment of the Buddha, they undertake the practice, and when the practice matures, then they enter the fixed course of rightness. The Dhamma follower is maybe not so emotional, but maybe more sort of intellectually inclined. So when they meet the Buddha, maybe they think, is he enlightened or not? I'm not so sure. They don't feel that strong uprising of devotion and faith, but when they hear the teaching, they think, wow, this is real. This is genuine. This isn't just a bunch of malarkey or baloney, but this is the real thing. And then they investigate and look into the implications of the teaching. And as they do so, then their wisdom becomes stronger and sharper. And when it reaches a sufficient degree, then they enter that fixed course of rightness, that irreversible path to liberation. And then as they continue to cultivate that path, sometime before they pass away, they realize the fruit of stream entry. Yeah, so this sutta makes clear that the meaning of entering the fixed course of rightness. It means, in effect, that you enter that irreversible path to liberation. And the path will go through 4 stages of realization. First comes the stage of stream entry, then the stage of once returning, the stage of non-returning, and finally, at the end, the stage of the Arahat, the one who actually attains liberation in this very life. So let's see this. Okay, so this takes care of that meaning of the fixed course of rightness. And here is elaborated as the fixed course consisting in rightness in regard to kusala Dhamma, wholesome qualities. Okay, so this sutta is telling us how, while listening to the good Dhamma, one is incapable of entering upon the fixed course of rightness and wholesome qualities. So what are the 5? Gita, I see you raise your hand.
Yes, Bhante, do you have to get rid of the 10 unwholesome qualities to enter Sotapanna?
Wait, the sound is not coming through for, maybe Jason can increase the volume. Okay, try again.
Thank you, Bhante, for all your teachings. I just wanted to find out, do you have to get rid of the 10 unwholesome qualities first before you can enter the path and fruition of Sotapanna?
I think better to keep the questions till I ask for questions.
Okay, thanks, Bhante.
Yeah,
No worries.
I
Thank
thought
you.
that you just had some question about what I was directly saying.
Okay, thanks, Bhante.
Yes, okay, so let us look at the sutta now. Okay, so what are these 5 qualities that prevent a person from entering on the fixed course of rightness? So first, one disparages the talk. One sort of, while you're listening to the talk, then you give rise to bad thoughts about the talk. What is that person saying? He's talking a lot of nonsense. This teaching that he's expounding, that's just a lot of malarkey or baloney. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's got it wrong. He's got it upside down and inside out. So you disparage the talk. That's the first quality. Second, I'm a little hesitant to say this now. One disparages the speaker. I don't want to put any ideas in your mind. But you're thinking, who is that guy talking? What are his qualifications? Look, he's got the wrong color robe. Why is he the baldy head? What are some other things? Yeah, so you disparage the speaker. Or you think he doesn't know the Dhamma correctly, I know the Dhamma correctly. So one has those kinds of thoughts of putting down, even just in one's mind, putting down the speaker. The third one, and this is quite important, one disparages oneself. So one has sort of a bad opinion about yourself. This is called, there's a technical term for this in Pali, it's called omana, which means the inferiority conceit. So here you're listening to the talk and you think, oh, I can never understand the teaching. Oh, I'm so foolish, I'm so stupid. This teaching is much too profound for me. Let me just entertain myself. I won't try to understand the Dhamma. Instead, I'll just go and turn off the listening to Bhante's talk. There might be some nice, interesting movies on YouTube or Tubi or Netflix, or there's a good sports match on, and so you disparage yourself, you don't have confidence in yourself. And if you have thoughts like that, then you can't enter the fixed course of rightness. Okay, the next, you listen to the Dharma, to the teaching, with a distracted and scattered mind. So when you listen to the Dharma, we'll see this when you come to the good qualities. Yeah, I'll just go through the rest of the bad qualities quickly, and then we come to the good qualities, the qualities that we need. Okay, then the next is that you listen to the Dhamma, you attend to it carelessly, and maybe carelessly is not such a good translation here. But it's hard to come up with a good translation of this word. The word is ayoniso. So it's the negative of yoniso. Yoniso has the sense of thoroughly, carefully, deeply examining the teaching, thoughtfully, intelligently. And then ayoniso is you just scratch the surface. You don't really try to penetrate deep into the teaching. Okay, so if you have these 5 qualities, then even while listening to the good Dhamma, one is unable to enter the fixed course of rightness in regard to wholesome qualities. Okay, then the opposite of this, these are the 5, call these 5 requirements for entering the fixed course of rightness while listening to the good Dharma. And so the first 3, you don't disparage the talk, but you have some respect for the content of the talk itself. Even you might disagree with some things, but you don't put it down, but you listen with an open mind, trying to, to accept the teaching, to absorb the teaching. One does not disparage the speaker. It doesn't mean that you have to put the speaker up on a pedestal, but you have at least some kind of respect for the teacher, and you maybe recognize that the teacher has certain qualifications to be able to explain and expound the Dhamma. Then you don't disparage yourself. You have to listen with confidence in yourself, some kind of trust in yourself, even if you don't think you have the qualifications to really make that breakthrough while listening to a particular talk. At least you think, well, if I don't make the breakthrough on this occasion, I can develop myself and develop these worthy qualities so that on some future occasion, I can attain at least the flash of realization. Okay, then next we have the 4th essential quality, and this is, whereas on the negative side, one is listening to the Dhamma with a distracted and scattered mind. Here you're listening to the Dhamma with an undistracted mind and with a one-pointed mind. So you're paying close attention to the Dhamma. Your mind is focused on the teaching, trying to understand it, trying to absorb it. Yeah, so it's, actually for the one-pointed mind, the Pali word here is ekagga citto. So citta is the mind, eka is one, and agga is like a point. So the mind is so closely attending, so closely to the teaching, so that there's no distraction, no scattered thoughts at all. And then the 5th quality, again, any kind of English translation here is not quite adequate. I rendered one attends to it carefully, but this is in the sense of yoniso. It's not just carefully the way we ordinarily use that word, but you're trying to really penetrate into the teaching. You're trying to get to the bottom of the teaching. So your mind is, first it's one-pointed, unified, focused on the teaching, and then you are examining, sort of inquiring into the teaching, trying to get the real meaning, the significance of the teaching. And so when you have these 5 qualities, then while listening to the good Dhamma, to a talk on the Dhamma, one is capable of entering the fixed course of rightness consisting in the fixed course consisting in rightness in wholesome qualities. In other words, one is capable of entering the path to the stage of stream entry. And what's interesting, I mean, I have to say nowadays, probably there are a few people capable of this, but during the day, when you read the suttas, we see that often when the Buddha is giving a discourse, there are people in the audience that he's addressing who are paying such close attention that the text tells us that as they're listening to the discourse, their minds become fully absorbed in the Buddha's words, so that the 5 mental hindrances fall away, that the mind is not hindered by any of the obstacles. They're just completely absorbed in what the Buddha is saying. And then while the Buddha is speaking, right on the spot, the text says, there arises in them the spotless, stainless eye of the Dharma, which sees into the truth of the teaching. Then right on the spot, they become a stream enterer. Yeah, my favorite example of this occurs in a little collection called the Udana. And this Udana tells us there was this crippled beggar who would, wander around the streets in the town. I think it was in Savatthi or Rajagaha. Don't remember which one. But he would collect sort of the scraps of garbage from the garbage bins, or he would sometimes go to houses begging. And one time he came to a place, there was an open field, and the Buddha was sitting there giving a discourse to a large group of people. And so this beggar saw the large group of people, and he thought, that's the teacher Gautama, that's the Buddha giving a talk. Maybe when his talk is finished, there's going to be like a kind of feast, and food will be distributed. Maybe I'll get something to eat. And so this beggar, I think his name was Buddha, just stood at the outer edge of the assembly, because he was, I think probably he was from the outcast community. And yet the Buddha, while he was speaking, he saw this beggar at the edge of the assembly, and he used his sort of superpower to read the minds of the people in the assembly while he's speaking. And he saw that Buddha had the potential for attaining the breakthrough, for reaching stream entry. And so the Buddha formulated his teaching in such a way that it was specifically directed at the beggar, even though he's speaking to the whole audience, but he's formulating his ideas so that it will have that resonance with the mind of the beggar. And while he's standing there hoping to get some food, Buddha, the beggar, becomes completely absorbed in the Buddha's discourse. And the Buddha continues, and then at a certain point, all of the mental hindrances in the beggar's mind drop away. His mind becomes utterly unified on the teaching, and he attains the stage of stream entry. He becomes sort of a partially enlightened one right on that occasion. Like all of the great philosophers of Europe, of India, of China, couldn't resolve the great deepest problems of the human condition, but this poor beggar, by listening to the Buddha's discourse, attains the realization of the ultimate truth. Okay, so that's because he listened with an undistracted, one-pointed mind, and while listening, he was attending yoniso manasikāroti. He attended deeply, carefully, thoroughly to the words of the Buddha. And so he could enter upon this fixed course of rightness and wholesome qualities. Okay, now maybe we can take some questions. So Gita, maybe you want to repeat your question?
Yes, Bhante, that was a fabulous story. Thank you so much for sharing the deep Dhamma with us. We're so grateful to you. Bhante, because in the readings that I've come across, the 10 unwholesome
Wait,
states.
Jason is going to increase the volume again.
Okay.
Okay, go on.
So in the readings that I've come across, it's been repeatedly mentioned that it's not so easy, that we have to concentrate on perfecting our 10 unwholesome states. Does it have to be perfectly eliminated before we enter the first path and fruit of Sotapanna?
We have to perfect the 10 unwholesome states?
Yeah, no, I mean, get rid of them, obliterate them. Yeah, that's what I mean. And develop the wholesome states, like the 10 wholesome states, as opposites.
You mean like the not killing, not stealing, that sexual misconduct?
Yeah, those are all what do you call it? The
10 courses of wholesome karma?
yeah, wholesome karma. But I'm talking about the unwholesome states. Do we have to obliterate them before we can enter path and fruition of a Sotapanna?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to clear up.
Yeah, I'd say that one has to develop a certain base or foundation of wholesome qualities. That's of course necessary, but it doesn't mean that you have to completely, in my understanding, completely obliterate the tendencies towards those unwholesome qualities.
Okay, Bhante, yeah.
Because we take a case, let's take a case of maybe somebody like Angulimala, who had been like a serial killer.
Correct.
He was just killing, he had murdered many people. And
Correct.
then he encountered the Buddha, and then right on the spot, I don't know if he attained stream entry on that spot, but he was convinced by the Buddha's teaching, became a monk. Yeah, but I would say, of course, certainly one should make a strong commitment to abandoning the unwholesome courses of action and developing the wholesome courses. But I don't know that you have to completely overcome the unwholesome courses in order to reach stream entry.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because it's only in the Arahant stage are we like fully perfected the wholesome states of mind, right? And Angulimala had a bunch of good karma behind him. So, I mean, and a Buddha was there. So we're not so lucky to have the Buddha around, but we have you, Bhante. So we're learning from you, which is awesome. But thank you, Bhante. You cleared that up for me. Thank you so much. Namo Buddhaya. Thiruvan Sadnai. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Now let's see how we get. Okay, so people who want to ask questions, the way to ask questions, for those online, you know, I think last week I forgot to ask whether people here in the live audience had questions. This is my fault. I still have the habit of, I have the bad Zoom habit. So I'll ask that, let's give the people who are here in person a chance. If they have any questions, you could raise the hand.
I have a comment on what Gita just asked.
Yeah, okay, you take the microphone so that the sound.
It's my understanding from what I've read that the process of attaining the stages of enlightenment is a process of abandoning the 10 unwholesome states.
Yeah.
And that in the process of attaining stream entry, certain unwholesome states, I forget which exact ones, are attenuated, but not necessarily completely abandoned. And then that process continues as we go through
Yeah.
Sakadagami,
Yeah.
Anagami.
Yeah, one cuts with the attainment of stream entry. Actually, what the text tells us here, did I close it? No, I still have it, okay. Okay, what the text tells us here is that this is a person who's not yet the stream enterer, but who has entered the path, is incapable of doing any deed because of which they might be reborn in the lower realms. Okay, so this would be probably the serious degrees of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying in the sense of lying in ways that damage other people or get unfair advantages for oneself. So those would be serious transgressions of the 10 courses of wholesome action that they become incapable of doing. Probably there would be like minor infractions would be possible, like maybe say a person, if they're annoyed by a mosquito, they might slap the mosquito, might tell a little innocent, what's called a white lie, like flattering.
We've got hungry ghosts.
Yeah, flattering their wife, even though they don't like the hairdo, but they say, oh, you look very nice today. But this would be like the serious transgressions are not, they're not capable of committing the serious transgressions. Okay, so anybody else who's here in person? Okay, Adimutta. Okay.
It's funny. I'm just wondering regarding the Samyutta Nikaya, these two passages, what level of samadhi is required for faith follower and
What
Dhamma?
level of
Samadhi is required for to be a faith follower and Dhamma follower respectively.
Okay.
And
So-
my understanding is that one has to maintain the similar level of samadhi until pass away to maintain the status of a faith follower and Dhamma follower, right?
I didn't catch the last part.
Like one has to maintain the same level of samadhi until pass away to maintain the status of faith follower.
Okay, so the question was, what level of samadhi is required to attain the level of faith follower or Dhamma follower? And do you have to maintain the same level of samadhi up to the stage of passing away? Is that it? Okay, this is sometimes a debated, disputed question, issue amongst followers of Theravada Buddhism. Some say that even to attain the path, to become a faith follower or Dhamma follower, you have to develop samadhi to the level of the jhanas. I don't see a basis for that in the suttas. What I see is that a certain level, just a certain level of concentration is necessary, but it doesn't have to be the level of the full jhana absorption. Yeah, we don't see anything very specific said about the level of samadhi that's necessary, just that said that the text will use the expression that one becomes one-pointed and concentrated, but it doesn't elaborate upon that. And then I think once you have that level of concentration, of samadhi, to reach the level of faith follower, Dhamma follower, one will naturally preserve that up to the stage of close to the time of death. It doesn't mean that you're continuously in that level of samadhi, because that's only reached during the time one is developing meditation. But that level of, one will, I think, continue to have access, one will not lose that level of samadhi and the ability to enter that level of samadhi in the course of one's life. That's what I think. Okay, any other questions here? Okay, so let us see online. So we have Yong.
Bhante, good morning. I have a question about disparaging the talk.
The talk, yeah.
One of the qualities. So the talk, could I interpret as Dhamma talk?
Yeah, this is referring to a Dhamma talk because the sutta begins by while listening to the good Dhamma. So
Yeah.
it's a Dhamma talk. It's not just general talk.
May I ask, what is the Pali word disparaging the talk?
The Pali word for talk?
Disparaging the talk.
I'm not catching.
Um,
Oh, disparaging the talk.
Amana.
Okay, let me see.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, I don't have the text open. Oh, I think Boe is ahead of me. I think it's Pariboti. Is it Pariboti? Yeah, it's Pariboti or Paribhavati.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Bhante, I have question when you explain. I'm sorry, I have a broken English, so I hopefully you understand my question. When you explain the 5 faculties, it just came up. I thought about the Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga, Hatha Yoga. I can apply to these 5 faculties.
Do these 5 faculties correspond to the yogas of the Bhagavad Gita?
Yeah, like Bhakti Yoga, faith, Raja Yoga, mindfulness, samadhi, Jnana Yoga, wisdom,
Yeah,
and the energy like Karma Yoga.
yeah, interesting point.
I don't know, when you explain, I just it coming up, like a pop up in my mind, because Bhagavad Gita is like a integral yoga. We have to have at the same time. So 5 faculties we should have. This is a wholesome qualities.
Yeah, okay, so the Bhagavad Gita, or let's say the Indians, or the Hindu system of yogas, let me see if I could remember. There's
Yeah,
Bhakti
Jnana Yoga.
Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga. Bhakti, let me just get them.
Because you said faith is like a devotion.
Yeah, okay, Karma, Raja, and
Also including Hatha Yoga. Raja is including
yeah,
Hatha
I
Yoga.
wouldn't include Hatha Yoga here. Okay, because Hatha Yoga is the yoga of the physical postures and pranayama, the breathing exercises. Interesting, there seems to be some, almost you could make some correlation between those yogas and these faculties. Like bhakti is the yoga of devotion, and it has some correspondence with the faith faculty. So I would say those in the Hindu system who incline to bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion, would be those with the predominance of the faith faculty. Karma yoga, this is the yoga of engaging in activity. This would be like social activity, service, work activity, while developing a practice, would seem to have some correspondence with the faculty of energy or effort. Yeah, Raja Yoga is a yoga aimed at developing dhyana.
Mind.
Yeah, dhyana, deep meditation, and samadhi. So that would have some correlation with the faculty of samadhi. And jnana yoga is the yoga of wisdom, of knowledge, which would correspond to the faculty of wisdom. Yeah, so there's some correspondence between them, though the Buddha, these 5 yoga, or these 4 yogas and hatha yoga as well, all emerge as systems probably centuries after the time of the Buddha, at least a century after or 2 centuries after the time of the Buddha. And of course, the way they are interpreted and practiced is quite different from the way these faculties work in Buddhism. But maybe what's characteristic about Buddhism, you see, within the Indian system or the Hindu system, there's strong stress on just one of these modes of yoga. But what Buddhism emphasizes is, though people will differ in the faculty on which they place emphasis, but Buddhism sort of stresses the need to achieve some kind of balance of the faculties. So it's said that faith should be balanced with wisdom, energy should be balanced with samadhi or concentration, and mindfulness is what oversees and sort of governs the balance of the faculties. So like within bhakti yoga, looking at bhakti yoga from my Buddhist point of view, I say that this is a form of practice that lets emotion play too strong a role, so that one just becomes completely sort of swept away by this spiritual devotion. And so this is the kind of yoga that we see practiced by the Hare Krishna community. You go on the streets of Manhattan, dancing in the streets of Manhattan, Hare Krishna. Were you a Hare Krishna at some point? I see you swaying. You do? Okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. Yeah, a little secret. When I was my senior year of college, that's when A.C. Bhaktivedanta set up his first temple in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan. Yeah, I visited that and I thought, I want to be a spiritual person. And he gave a lecture. And then after the lecture, then that instrument, the harmonium, starts playing and the drum starts playing and everybody is chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So I thought, okay, I want to be a spiritual person. I'm chanting too, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. But then they got up and started to dance in a circle. And one voice in my mind was telling me, you want to be a spiritual person, you get up and start dancing too. The other voice started to tell me, don't make a fool of yourself. Get out of here. Yeah, so I wound up not a bhakti yogin, but a Buddhist monk.
Bhante, it's very interesting to hear about this. I missed the mindfulness make a balance, faith and wisdom.
Wait. I'm not hearing so clearly. So
it is very interesting to make a balance. So mindfulness, the sati make a balance between faith and wisdom and energy and samadhi. What makes a balance? Faith and wisdom and the energy and samadhi.
What makes the balance?
Yeah, you say the faith and the wisdom, we need balance.
Yeah, exactly.
So what make mindfulness make a balance? Too much bhakti, we need balance. We need mindfulness to make a balance.
Yeah,
so
I
we
say
need
it's
wisdom.
Yeah, mindfulness is what plays the governing role. Yeah, mindfulness is what ensures that faith, you say when faith follows its own path without sufficient wisdom, then it turns into, maybe call this just
become blind faith.
Blind faith and just sort of emotional devotion, purely emotionally exuberant devotion. And if wisdom follows its own course without being animated by faith, then it can just turn into sort of dry intellectualism, philosophical understanding, but without a commitment to practice and realization. So mindfulness ensures that if faith is becoming too strong, you have to, again, try to develop stronger wisdom. If wisdom is just becoming dry intellectual knowledge, then mindfulness sees to it that one develops practices that inspire faith. And similarly with energy and samadhi. Okay, let's see. I think that we passed
you.
over some. Chris has a question.
Yes, thank you, Bhante. Bhante, it seems to me that in this day and age, with all the people purporting to teach the Dhamma, that we need to have a certain critical and maybe skeptical mindset when we go into listening to a teaching from someone.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I'm just wondering how we reconcile the sutta with that.
I think there's a difference between, say, disparaging the talk or disparaging the speaker and having this sort of critical mindset. There's certainly a difference. Disparaging the talk and the speaker is sort of a manifestation of conceit, a kind of arrogance, and maybe also a tendency towards maybe ill will, hostility. Yeah, a combination of conceit and ill will. Whereas the critical faculty is the application of intelligence to, in fact, the Buddha does insist on using one's intelligence in order to examine the teaching and evaluate the teaching. You can find this, for example, it's in the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 47. It's called the investigator, where he says that you should even investigate me, investigate my words. Don't just accept them on blind faith, but examine me to look at my own conduct, my own teaching. Yeah, so that's, I would say, the distinction between disparaging and approaching with a critical, inquiring mind. Okay, Pauline? Pauline? Okay, I don't hear. Sheila?
Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't unmute. Okay, back to the question of, when you talk about the 10 unwholesome actions,
Yeah.
said that we don't have to abandon all of them. But I was thinking about the wrong view, that shouldn't that we abandon that in order to walk the path?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that wrong view, I would say, is certainly an obstacle. That is the view that denies that there's any kind of, I call, objective foundation for ethics, for morality.
Or the wrong view that there's no rebirth, or there's no karma.
Yeah. The wrong view that denies the operation of karma and that denies the, let's say, the wrong view that denies the operation of karma across a succession of lifetimes, that denies the process of rebirth. Yeah, that would be certainly an obstacle to attaining the stage of the breakthrough to the fixed course of rightness.
Thank you.
Okay, Sheila, did you have I see that your mic is open. Do you have a question? Okay, maybe she didn't have a question. Okay, let us just quickly look through. There are a few other suttas in this series. So we have 3 suttas on the same theme. Okay, so we dealt with the first one. Let's see the second one. See if we can move through it. How do we go down? Okay, so among the 5 obstacles, the first 3 are the same. So we have difference in the 4th and 5th. Okay, the fourth one amongst the bad qualities is that one is unwise, obtuse. Yeah, it uses a few words that are synonyms. And then the opposite of that, we could just look at the opposite. Okay, the opposite one is wise, intelligent, and astute. And then among the bad qualities, this we have to be very careful of, one thinks one has understood what one has not understood. This is really a big problem, because we have people who think, I know the Dhamma, I have realized the Dhamma, and they haven't really understood it correctly, but they have their views, their opinions. This is a very, very common problem nowadays. I have to say, particularly what causes a real proliferation in this particular obstacle is the use of the internet. So everybody, they have these Dhamma chat rooms, and everybody thinks I'm the expert on the Dhamma. And then they get into arguments and they knock down the opinion of others, and everybody thinks my view is right, my view is correct, I've understood, you haven't understood. And so the opposite of that is that one does not imagine that one has understood what one hasn't understood. In other words, you have to come into the teaching with a certain degree of humility and openness of mind, but also, as Chris mentioned a few minutes ago, you also have to keep that critical edge of thought and not just accept everything blindly, thinking I know nothing, the speaker knows everything, but always be willing to question, to examine, to investigate. Okay, next is sutta number 3 in the series. In a way, this is similar, even though the terms are different, but the factors are similar to those we've covered. So one listens to the Dhamma as a denigrator who's intent upon denigration. Like with your mind, when you're listening, you want to put down the speaker or put down the teaching. There are people, this is in the contemporary Dhamma scene, things like this happen. Somebody always goes into these Dhamma chat rooms or even in person, just seeking to denigrate, to put down the speaker and their teaching without any real intention of learning. Somehow this is it certainly was an illness in the time of the Buddha, but it's really become blown up today. And then this seems almost the same thing. I don't really see a difference. One listens to the Dhamma with the intention of criticizing it, seeking faults. That seems very similar, maybe a very slight difference. And then the third here, one is ill-disposed towards the teacher, intent on attacking him. Yeah, I think, I've experienced that even when we started using Zoom. This is in the early period of the pandemic lockdown, when we started using Zoom. Over the chat box, I started getting some really nasty chats came in, condemning me, saying, from the way you explain the Dhamma, you're going to be going to the lowest hell. Truly, I'm not exaggerating. And so for that reason, maybe this is my fault. I shut down the chat box so that people couldn't put comments in the chat box in order to save them from committing unwholesome comment. Then maybe because I couldn't put their views in the chat box, then they dropped away, so I haven't seen chats like that in a long time. Maybe I should check the chat box now. Okay, so this should cover our 3 suttas on the 3 suttas on the fixed course of rightness. So any additional questions, short ones, simple ones? Zering, yeah.
But talking about...
Do we have the microphone? Yeah, please take that.
Thank you. When they're talking about the faith, Hare Krishna, if somebody is able to do that practice of Hare Rama, Hare Krishna with mindfulness awareness, you can use that, I think, that practice towards enhancing your practice of Dharma, isn't it so?
Okay, the question is, if somebody who's doing the Hare Krishna practice, or any kind of bhakti practice, a devotional practice, doing it with mindfulness,
Yes.
they can do that to enhance their practice of Dharma.
Yes.
That's the
Bhante.
question?
Yes, Bhante.
Of course, if they're devoted to Krishna, then they wouldn't be doing it as part of a Buddhist path, but they'll be maybe mindfully using the devotion as a way, because that practice of devotion can lead to a kind of samadhi, certainly a kind of samadhi, because it brings up this piti, this joy and delight, and it's a wholesome kind of joy and delight, even though it's coupled with a view that as Buddhists we don't agree with, but it's coupled with it's a wholesome kind of joy and delight, and the mind becomes focused upon it, and so it will bring a kind of samadhi. And in the Buddhist practice too, I mean, in fact, the Buddha explains this, that you use the recollection of the qualities of the Buddha. So this is called Buddhanusati, recollection of the Buddha. So we turn those qualities over, like Arahang, Samma Sambuddho, Vijacharana Sampanno. Usually we start off with 9 qualities, and we could whittle it down to 3 qualities. Usually I say you choose the 3 qualities that you prefer, and then you turn those over and over, and it brings a kind of joy and happiness into the mind, and that will bring a kind of samadhi. But in Buddhism, we say you have to do this with mindfulness, because mindfulness prevents that joy and happiness from just becoming emotional exuberance, but it steers it towards a kind of calm, tranquil samadhi, rather than an ecstatic, exuberant samadhi.
Just to continue, Bhante, in that state of being exuberant, wouldn't you be able to practice so-called these 3 characteristics as a Buddhist?
Yeah. I'd say if the mind is sort of carried away by that exhilaration, that exuberance, maybe it doesn't have sufficient calm to be able to observe the 3 characteristics. But if you couple that devotional practice with mindfulness, then it prevents that exuberance from becoming too excited, too exuberant, too exhilarated. So you get a balance of joy and delight with calmness, and that could provide a sufficient basis for developing the contemplation that will bring insight and wisdom. Okay, I think we're going to have to end for the day. And so we'll end with the sharing of the merits. And so the way we do this, we're going to be dedicating the merits of our practice today, dedicating to the Dhamma protecting devas, the nagas, the dragon spirits that supposed to protect the climate and the weather. So they've been doing a rather poor job. We have to strengthen our dedication of merits to them, and all other beings, including our own relatives and friends. Akasata Jabumata Deva Naga Mahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Sasanang. Akasata Jabumata Deva Naga Mahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Desanang. Akasata Jabumata Deva Naga Mahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Mang Parang. Dukha Pata Jani Dukha Baya Pata Jani Baya Soka Pata Jani Soka Antu Sabepi Panino. May those in suffering be free from suffering. May those in fear be free from fear. May those in sorrow be free from sorrow. May all living beings also be thus. And then we're going to end with 3 bows to the Buddha. And we do actual bows because we have the chime here. Okay, so we can stand up, those who are here.
Bhante.
Okay.
Back to Bhante. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you so much, Bhante.
Be well, Bhante.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
Thank
Take
you.
care of your
Thank
health.
you.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank
Have
you,
a good day.
Bhante. Okay, thank you.
Be well and happy, Bhante.